Hello and welcome to D-SETI. This is a video presentation called Orbs Are People Too. It presents documentation of my dream-inspired geometric inquiry into orbs, UAPs, that's UFOs, and extraterrestrial dream-associated body marks. This is a little bit of a unique presentation in that this is the documentation of my inquiry rather than the presentation of claims or hypothesis, even though those are involved. This inquiry arises out of my dreams and dreamlike experiences, and I'm using things like dreamwork as a means to continue that exploration. The precedents I look to are shamanic dreamwork as put forward by Laughlin and Rock, or the active imagination processes of Carl Jung. Please do understand that the topics of dreams and extraterrestrial contact are triggering and taboo, so please be mindful about continuing. Please do know that everything I'm saying here is offered as a draft. I have done my best to check into the facts and figures I'm offering, but they're not going to be perfect. There will be bugs in my analysis. There will be flaws in my lines of thinking, but it is important to put forward this documentation as a means of both communication about the potency of this line of inquiry, as well as the continuation of actions that I am taking on behalf of my dreams and things like that. So this is going to be a long presentation. I will be fumbling a little bit with my graphs and charts and things like that. You are invited to use a video speed controller to speed up how I'm speaking. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can click on the gear icon and move me up to 2 times speed if that's helpful for you. You can pause and stop as you go along. And there are other video presentations and series and expressions on my website or on my channel that you can get into for more information and sources here. Please do know that any conclusions that you come to are your own. I am trying not to put forward my own conclusions, but rather to document my inquiry process and also state some of my conclusions here, but as a means of documentation, not necessarily as a means of communication of those. I'm not hoping you're going to adopt my claims or anything. Much rather, I'm offering this as a sort of test to see how this line of inquiry lands and to see where I need to support some of my conclusions or analysis methods. All right. It is important to know that I am looking at this like dreamwork, and I'm citing dreamwork precedents here. So we're using the ethics and epistemology of dreamwork as put forward by the International Association of the Study of Dreams. So that means that the final authority regarding the significance of a dream is the dreamer, not the researcher, not the person who's consuming the stories about the dreams. You can make your own conclusions, of course, about the nature of the world that we share together. But in terms of the significance of my dreams, I'm saying that is my own authority to determine, is it a big dream, is it a little dream, is it significant just to me, or perhaps it might have transpersonal significance. In this case, I'm saying that the dreams I had in relationship with these body marks, these geometries, have transpersonal significance. That's the claim I am making based on my own discernment of my dream process. And that is something I'm doing within the bounds of ethics, right? One of the other aspects of the ethics and epistemology of dreamwork is that it really does require non-dual coparticipation in the inquiry. You may wonder what that actually means, but just know that there is a non-dual quality to this inquiry, meaning I'm not offering objective testimony necessarily, although I'm offering objective measurements and things like that. I'm also not necessarily offering only subjective experiences. I looked at John Mack's description of non-dual clinical work in his book Abduction as a really good understanding as to what this means and how we can apply non-dual consciousness inquiry to objective testimonies and things like that. I am using other people's videos, photos, and recordings to perform these analysis. I've done the analysis on my own data, and that has driven forward a lot of the analysis process, but I'm also using other people's photographs and things like that. When there has been an opportunity to ask for permission, I have asked for permission, and generally I offer only this sort of, I use stuff only within the public sphere that's been published, that someone else has published, and that I'm only using it within the context of fair use, meaning I'm not offering the original recording, I'm offering simply derivative analysis as a means to explore this publicly available recording. And so in those cases, I'm offering documentation here. You'll see I cite each of the videos I use in the YouTube, and you'll see the URL there. I'm going to work up documentation and things like that to be included as a data source in the open source and open data repository of ePtolemy. That's where I'm publishing my geometric analysis tools and processes more or less as I go. The analysis I'm presenting here today will likely be available in a week or so as I clean it up and bring it into the repository. The purpose here in this documentation is to really respond to requests of dreams I had last night that really provided a direct understanding as to the outline here. So I've been working with the intuition that I really do need to express some of the more outlandish hypotheses or conclusions or considerations I have. I don't want to put those forward as claims, and so I was wondering how best to communicate them. The way that was inspired to me through dreams was to document my inquiry as such right now in this moment, and not necessarily to offer it as a sort of conclusionary thing. So this is like a draft. Like they said, you can do a first draft because one of the things that's really important in this inquiry for me is the instructions from the non-human intelligences or the dream characters. Basically, I have extraterrestrial or non-human intelligence manifesting as dream characters. So this is not uncommon. About 6% of people do dream of extraterrestrial beings. Whether or not they're real in the way that we think or not doesn't matter, because I'm using this as a means of engagement like active imagination, standing behind the very strong precedent of Carl Jung. With his work, you might be familiar with like the Red Book or something like that. So this is the sort of engagement I'm doing. They say for me to express quickly and have a quick iteration cycle of this analysis. So I discover geometry, I express it. I discover more geometry, I express it. I don't hold on to it. I'm not building up theories. I'm simply, my role here is to describe the geometry present and to connect that and interpret the fact that there is presence of geometry that has these qualities. What might that mean in this context of the Western liberal arts and philosophy of science? That's really what the dream characters are inviting me to do. And they've been inviting me to express the notion that orbs are people too for several weeks now. And I was just curious as to how I might do that. And this really came up in a dream this morning. The dream itself was, the image associated with it was kind of a cross composed of Vesica Pisces. There were 4 circles around there. I'm still not sure how that relates. I've had that image in my dreams for about three days straight now. But when I come back, there's that image in my brain, but also there's an intuition, there's a fully completed thought that I'm just sort of exploring in the hypnopompic state. And so that seems really important to me. And the thing that I was exploring in the hypnopompic state this morning was this outline that I'm walking through right now with you. Another purpose here is to offer this consideration, because even though it is so outlandish to consider that flashes of light in the sky are blobs of conscious plasma, something like that, and that they might be best understood as people rather than as phenomena. This is outlandish, but it actually seems to be very relevant to the national security dialogue happening right now. So there is a communication regarding UAPs. We allegedly cannot communicate with them. We allegedly do not understand who or what they are or why they're interacting with us. I say allegedly because when you ask experiencers of contact if they know or not, they really have a pretty good idea as to what happened to them. And there's also conundrums and paradoxes and things like that. We'll talk about that as we go along. But allegedly, we can't communicate with these things. Allegedly, we don't understand them. They definitely express technological capability that outpaces ours. So therefore, according to the national security state, these things are a threat, right? These things are a threat. However, they're a threat primarily because we don't understand them and cannot communicate with them. So to have the information that orbs are people too, and that there is direct connection between these expressions of consciousness that sometimes appear as orbs in the sky, there's a direct connection by way of dreams to human beings on this planet that can tell you what they dream of, that have an ongoing relationship with these beings, that have a sense of wisdom and understanding as to what's going on. And I'm looking to other people as examples here, and we'll go through them one by one as we go through what that connection looks like, right? So I'm saying that there is probably a direct means of communication with these consciousnesses that are expressing through blobs of light, also anomalies, also kind of trickster hoax behavior. But as we'll see, if we're encountering geometry that is a priori in nature, meaning it is meaningful outside of the realm of phenomenal experience, we are having a direct mind-to-mind communication with the noumena, not the phenomena, right? So this is a little bit of a vast inquiry here, and I'm using big words primarily because if I use the small words, something like you can have telepathy with these orbs and they'll explain to you what's going on, it sounds rather ridiculous. So perhaps, we'll use the euphemisms of phenomena, of noumena, of non-local, theories of consciousness and things like that. So I really would love to see this means of communication be brought into a national dialogue, right? Because primarily this type of communication is not unprecedented. It is not unprecedented whatsoever. As you'll see, it is highly precedented that there is a direct mind-to-mind communication with these non-human intelligences, but that it happens through dream or dreamlike states of consciousness, and that those states of consciousness, those phases of consciousness, are not well understood within the monophasic culture of materialist science, right? So we go, okay, there's this whole Western experience that is focused on waking phase consciousness and physical matter reality. Wonderful. It's now been so focused on that, it doesn't know there's an outside, and it doesn't know how to relate to it. But every time it tries, the non-human intelligences are there kind of laughing at us and inviting us to deeper understanding and collaboration. So I wanted to share that and provide that context because it's relevant to current events right now. And then I want to invite research collaboration and support. So this is really an invitation. As I've demonstrated, I have a connection with these, with this sort of unfolding phenomena, right? I have a connection with dreams. It's really marked my body. It's marked my heart and soul, and I see actually connections of my consciousness in the expressions of all things. primarily because I'm a mystic, and I have that understanding from dream practices, and you can too if you practice with dreams and things like that. I'm inviting research collaboration primarily because this phenomena of emergent anomalous geometry is happening to many, many people. My role is simply to point out there is geometry coming from these anomalous sources and to describe them using ruler and compass construction to invite you to participate in the ritual, the transpersonal ritual of congruence testing. Does this geometric construction that Daniel Rekshan produced using only a ruler and compass and 3 methods of construction, does that actually truly describe the geometry seen, say, in the Phoenix Lights? For me, I've gone through that congruence test by printing out images of the Phoenix Lights and laying over my ruler and compass constructions, putting those on the window and saying, aha, this ruler and compass construction that only was derived from three postulates and 3 very, very basic techniques produces that geometry. And therefore, I understand that the Phoenix Lights, in addition to being a phenomena, actually, truly, when we engage this transpersonal ritual of congruence testing with the phenomena with an a priori sort of construction, aka the geometry, we are moving beyond that gap between phenomena and noumena, right? We're moving into the realm of forms, and we're moving into mind-to-mind direct communication through the apprehension of communications that are intelligent and intentional, that cannot and will never be expressed exclusively through the material and physical world. And if you need to understand what I'm talking about, please do look to the source of and precedent of this geometry, which is Euclid, which is Plato and Socrates. Look into that history and see how that history relates to empires, and you will understand the precedents that are unfolding now in the national dialogues related to security, relating to these other forces. All right, so that's a little bit of a rant, but that's why I'm doing this. We need to do this. We need to do this as a people to really start studying these things and exploring these things, not just debunking, but going through and actually engaging in the mathematical, scientific, and transpersonal inquiry that will be required, that is being invited to take us to the next phase of exploration with this galactic or vast or cosmic intelligence, right? All right, so that's a bit of a preamble. So thank you for being with me. All right. So you need to know a few things, and I've already covered them in my soapbox spiel, but you need to know a few things, and you need to know about ruler and compass geometry. Ruler and compass geometry. This is the foundations of mathematics, and it involves 2 tools, the ruler or straight edge and the compass. And this is understood to be a priori. This is before it is the realm of pure ideas, right? This is not predicated on empirical understanding. We're thinking about the categories of perception. This really comes from Kant. This comes from where we understand phenomena to even be defined, right? Is the sense of a priori, a posteriori, so before and after, right? Experience, really. And so these are like, my claims are a priori. I go, a circle is composed of a diameter. A diameter is 2 radii. That capacity to draw a circle, these things are like a priori. The fact that 4 right angles makes a square, right? That sort of thing, or a rectilinear figure, like that sort of thing is a priori. It is, you don't encounter these things in nature, but you encounter them in mind. And so there's a whole discussion as to what that may or may not mean. But it's important to understand that ruler and compass geometry is the way we engage with that. These are the tools. It's not computation. It's not functional programming. It's not arithmetic per se. We use ruler and compass geometry to relate to that deeper foundation of mathematics. It's important to know that this mathematics is associated with multidimensional meaning. So in Plato, Plato is the philosopher who wrote about Socrates. You might be familiar with the word academy, right? This is where it comes from, academy, Plato's academy. And then Plato taught Aristotle, and Aristotle, so on and so forth, right? This is where our science comes from. This is where half of our language comes from. This is really the source of the Western worldview. And so Plato and Socrates, they're talking about geometry, and they understand that we apprehend the truth of things, that this triangle, this right angle triangle is equal to that, right? That sense of apprehension happens in the mind a priori, right? In that we understand the truth of these things, that a triangle is composed of 180 degrees, let's say. That actually is apprehended. We're recognizing that truth in the world out here in the geometric drawing because we're actually remembering something back in the world of forms. So this right now shows that this one dialogue from Plato, this is the Meno, shows that the ruler and compass geometry actually and truly is a transpersonal ritual. It is a sacrament of religion. And I'm using those words explicitly to establish the precedent that this work actually is more religious than scientific, even though I'm using scientific tools. I'm doing this to support the claim that this whole endeavor should be understood in the context of the ethics and epistemology of dreamwork, not necessarily the ethics and epistemologies of a law court, right? It's not a criminal activity. We're not looking for evidence in that case. We're actually doing something that is transpersonal in nature, that brings us into recollection. All right. So the next thing we need to know about is polyphasic consciousness and dreaming culture. I've mentioned this before. Polyphasic and monophasic are terms that relate to how a culture honors the different phases of consciousness. The phases of consciousness might be dreaming, dreamless sleep, sleeping, waking, daydreaming, lovemaking, art, flow, whatever, right? And there's a sense of flow, a sense of honoring multiple different phases. The Western culture, in contrast to 90% of all the other cultures on this planet, is monophasic. It says we only value waking. We want to control sleeping. We don't believe in dreams. We discount. People didn't know you were conscious during your dreams in the 1980s. That's 30 years ago, even though there's thousands of years of precedents and literature about this in other cultures that are academic, right? The Tibetans are academic. It is an academic system, and we've ignored that for years until the 1980s, until two researchers synchronistically discovered you can move your eyes in dream states. One of those researchers actually, and interestingly, was perpetually poked by extraterrestrial beings, sort of as he was doing his lucid dreaming experiments. That's Worsley, and the citation here is from a paper in the 80s by Gackenbach. So that's really important to know. And so how might the monophasic versus polyphasic cultures differ? Well, it differs in the culture of shamanic dreaming. This is it. Shamanic dreaming is the precedent or is the archetype for shamanic states of consciousness in general. So we look to the shamanic dreaming as the archetype to understand what polyphasic cultures are, right? So I look to the paper by Laughlin and Rock, which was published through the APA journal, I believe, Dreaming. And it goes through what can we learn from shamanic dreaming. And it says, hey, there's some big dreams versus little dreams. There's a principle of shamanic activity. There's a principle of interpretation. Is this a dream for me? Is this the dream for the community? Does this dream involve real entities out there that can tell me where water or a source of food or a source of danger is? Or does this involve simply my own dreaming mind? So these are parts and parcel of the shamanic dreaming culture. We don't have vocabulary to do that in the Western culture generally until the time of Carl Jung. So we can look to the academic and depth psychological work of Carl Jung as a precedent and as a means to bring in this shamanic dreaming culture language into our dialogue. All right. You need to know about epistemology, how we know things, right? If you never heard the word epistemology, just know it's the study of knowing things, right? And you're probably thinking that there's one objective truth out there, and that's totally fine. There might be one objective truth about the state of the physical matter reality in this world, but actually there's many different ways of knowing. And we can really get to that by looking at the difference between logic and mythology, right? You see a beautiful story, you hear a beautiful story, you're compelled, you're moved, you have wisdom. You don't necessarily have scientific knowledge, right? If we want to get scientific knowledge from that story, we might question the people who have heard the story. We might do content analysis on this story and start generating objective, logical domain knowledge. But on the other side, there's both the mythological and logical means of knowledge. This is sort of mirrored in the distinction between subjective and objective, which has been a very common distinction applied to epistemology. Subjective means it relates to the subjective experience. That means I'm having a subjective dream experience of tall, gray, extraterrestrial beings who are coming to me to explain the nature of dream shamanism through animal embodiment in both my dreams and waking life, right? So this is a subjective experience, right? My subjective experience is that I have a very impactful dream experience with these extraterrestrial beings, right? What objectively happened there? Well, I asked my wife, what happened last night? It's like we both slept in the bed, right? Like that's what happened, right? Objectively, what happened is that, the next day after that dream, I walked through two magnificent bucks with magnificent antlers that felt similar to the dreams I had the night before. Objectively, that's a coincidence, right? But subjectively, that was communication and rapport building experience with me. So it's important to know, I generally like to signify when I'm using subjective or mythological means of knowledge, as well as objective or logical means of knowledge, because that's a courtesy. It's an etiquette that Plato even offered and Socrates offered when they started talking about these things. They say, hey, we're moving from logical discourse to mythological discourse now. I say we should continue that because that's really helpful. You need to know the difference between testimony, proof, and evidence. And I'm talking about this because testimony is not evidence until it's brought into social context where evidence matters, right? So that might be a law court or that might be a scientific discussion. But testimony is your own, and you are the person who is the authority regarding your experiences, right? Then when it moves to consensus realm understanding, we as a collective and a consensus have responsibility to engage in these sorts of hypothesis testing and things like that, and the production of evidence and documentation. In part, I'm doing that here by providing a documentation of my thoughts and feelings in this inquiry without necessarily making complete and objective claims. I'm offering this as a draft of, my arguments that I will use to produce a document and a research effort. All right. You need to know about the trickster phenomenon too. So the phenomena defies categorization, right? So as we were talking about subjective and objective, we can turn to the work of Dr. John Mack, who described what non-dual inquiry into the subject matter actually means. We're using a convenience of objective ways of not knowing and talking about things, but it's only a convenience to stand in for this sense of non-dual interaction. That means there's no true subject and no true object. That means the boundaries of your true self actually are not the ego or your idea of self, but something else in the world that is expressive of connection with the earth, with the cosmos, with the field of collective unconscious or whatever that is. You're already that, even if you think you're not. So that gives you a sense that it is ultimately non-dual to begin with. And this expresses through a couple of different means. One is the trickster phenomena, right? We are dealing with, in my case, I'm dealing with a priori geometric constructions, right? So does it matter to me if these geometric constructions come through coincidence and hoaxes, right? Does that mean it's less meaningful, right? I'm pretty sure that several of the things I think are orbs are actually autofocus pulsations and funny things happening in the sky that aren't orb-like. But it expresses a geometry that is clear, distinct, and personally meaningful in the context of other geometries. It's moved my experience forward. And I'm ultimately relating to geometry in and of itself, intelligent geometry in and of itself that is emerging from the intelligence of this cosmos. So the fact that there's geometry that Doug and Dave over in England are using their plank and rope to do beautiful geometry that teaches me about something, that reveals a potency in the dream world that points to geometry that has been marked on dozens of other people's bodies. I go, this is actually meaningful, even if it was Doug and Dave or someone with an out of focus orb, right? Like at that point, let's be real. And I'm saying this because they can act through both anomalies and coincidence and actually manifest in nuts and bolts. The thing that I would challenge anyone inquiring into this and really concerned about the difference is to expand the scope until the difference between the hoax and the not hoax, right, doesn't actually matter. So, and that actually is a path of, I would say, mysticism in some way. The reason why I say this is because this whole experience, like John Mack I talked a little bit about Gackenbach, who is a virtual reality and dream researcher and also looked into out-of-body and UFO phenomena. She talked about Worsley, who was the co-discoverer of lucid dreaming. He was the English researcher. He wasn't LaBerge from Stanford. He was the other guy. He had this experience of ETs showing up and messing him up in his lucid dreaming research, right? And even recently in 2020 or 2021, a researcher called Raguda put forward this notion that out-of-body experience, astral projection, dreams, and alien abductions are one and the same phenomena, right? And that if we can emulate alien abduction experience in our lucid dreams, like lucid dream experiences, then therefore these ETs aren't real, right? And I'm not sure if that's actually the argument being made, but that's actually coming through literally what he's saying. They say they need to up their game in terms of expression of reality and objectivity. And I would actually say that the presentation of marks on the body in geometric forms that are consistent with anomalous geometry from orbs and UAPs really is upping their game. It's really and truly upping their game. These marks on the body are associated just with dreams. They're not associated with physical memory of abduction from what I understand. They are simply associated with dreams. Most people go, I had no idea what that was about, or I didn't know how to make sense of that dream. But they're not saying it's abduction, at least in the Dawson the Line case. They say maybe it is, maybe it's not. It's the dreamy thing. So I'm saying this geometry is the other side upping their game. That would be the claim that I would make, or possible claim. That's the inquiry I would engage in. And that's why I am doing this inquiry. I go, hey, this is them upping their game. They're saying there's geometry here. I'm going to look for the geometry. Here's the geometry. Therefore, can I take those dream characters, can I understand their claims to be supported, let's say. All right. So then finally, we need to talk about non-dual coparticipation. So this is a phrase that comes from California Institute of Integral Studies, this sort of participatory way of knowing. And really understanding that there is no subject, there is no object, that there is some sort of merger between the thing that's observed and the observer. This is the observer effect. This is the uncertainty principle. So we're understanding that even if we are engaged in objective research, we're actually engaged in much, much more as a person. And so we just have to acknowledge that. And so when I engage in this work, I go, okay, I'm participating, I'm doing something, even if it looks objective. How do I want my participation? Well, I want it to be according to the principle of non-harm for the benefit of all. That's generally how I unfold my participation here. Wonderful. So let's move on. There's a lot to cover. So I want to just briefly outline my story. I've documented this a number of different ways. You can get to that through the Book of Galactic Light on Amazon, or the YouTube channel, or the website D-SETI.org. Just know I have a practice of audio recording about 3 times a week about what's going on, and I have all these sort of journal-y things that I wouldn't want to publish, but actually do serve as a record for me. And so the story starts actually last summer, 2022. It actually starts much, much earlier, but I was working on a book called Missing Time Found. Don't worry, it's just a dream. A new and old hypothesis regarding ET-NHI associated missing time. So missing time is the gap of time, or it's like blacking out, but it's associated with UFOs and ETs or NHI. There's generally a sense of meaning. People might see it, like the Betty and Barney Hill case is a great example. They see a UFO, there's some landing, there's something happens, they're back on the road. How did that happen? Wow, actually there's 2 more hours that are unaccounted for. What happened in that time? Nobody can remember except through these dreamlike memories, right? So then they work with a hypnotist to figure it out, and lo and behold, it was zeta reticulans or whatever. So this whole experience around missing time has been supported and understood through the lens of hypnosis, which is not well understood within Western culture. There's a lot to say about that, but my claim here, or my hypothesis that I'm putting forward, this is the academic work I'm doing at the California Institute for Human Science. My PhD is really focused on this, is to say what is hypnosis in service? What is, I say it's actually dream work. I say it's actually shamanic dream work. And that we're doing shamanic dream work with these missing time experiences, not necessarily historic remembrance. And that's really important to know. So I'm putting forward that hypothesis. I've got a bunch of theory chapters. I've got like 14 sessions with interviews. I've got, one of the cases is a highly documented, with concurrent documentation of the UAP. And you'll see that UAP coming up. It's flashing in nearly geosynchronous, but not kind of expression above the CE5 experience, where my buddy Dan went out and had a 45 minutes of, I would say, beautiful missing time encounter that's very, very potent. So I'm writing all about this. I think I get done with all of the draft chapters, and the next day I took a sauna to really relax and celebrate it. And I looked down on my leg and I saw like 3 dots and then a smear of like 4 dots. And I go, oh my God, this is an abduction-related body mark. This is a red grid mark. This is a whatever. And I have stuff come up, dream memories come up. I tell this story elsewhere. And I go, I don't know how to make sense of this. I know at some point I will geometrically analyze this. I don't know how, when, or why. So I forget about it. I go to PhD school. I start engaging. They give me the assignment to do a transpersonal practice, and I start looking into magic numbers. I start looking into geometry. I start doing the heptarchical workings of Dr. John Dee, 15th century, 16th century scholar and alchemist who had angel communications, who I say is actually the precedent for ET or NHI hypnosis, not Mesmer. Not Mesmer, not those other guys, it's John Dee. He's actually the precedent for hypnosis in this way. So I do that inquiry, and then I get done with the class, and I had this whole, in that inquiry, a tall gray showed up through this whole beautiful animal embodiment experience, this whole dream experience. It was quite a thing, but I'm sharing that because I've documented it through 10 journal entries, through dreams, through whatever else, So I get done with that, and the solstice, 6 months after my mark, dream people come to me, dream characters. They say, I hear you really want to work for the benefit of others, that you want to affect change in this reality. Why don't you work with us? Because we establish the reality here. I say, oh, okay, great. I'll do dream work. I'll do Enochian magic. I ended up getting distracted with sacred geometry, and then that day, I didn't do any dream work or Enochian practice, but that night they said, hey, thanks for doing what we asked. You did the sacred geometry really beautifully. Just do what we say from now on. Yeah, that's the invitation. Do so in a way that's reasonable, that's not harmful, that is in line with your dream practices, what you would normally do, right? Like you normally would maybe make some art about your dreams. So why don't you keep doing that? And why don't you talk about them more often than not, which is what you already do. So that's sort of where we're at with it. That gives me a series of dreams that are instructing me on sacred geometry. I've started to call them the geometry lords and the dream people as a way to joke around with that, but they are sometimes requesting of things. And this presentation is one of their requests. And I go, oh, okay, I get it. I get it. It's like they're present, like this whole complete thought in hypnopompia that's associated with a geometry dream that I've been associated with these sort of big things. It's like so I listen to them, but generally I do so in a reasonable way that doesn't. Like I said, I'm engaged in this inquiry together and kind of skeptical a little bit as well. They teach me about geometry, crop circles, then they point me to the red grid mark phenomena and my own body mark. On the second, I went, oh my God, this body mark is geometric. And that really was a moment of transformation for me, because I realized this body mark I had that wasn't unexplained is actually a mathematical communication from that dream character I know and love since I was, like 3 years old or something like that. That's one of my first earliest recollections of this dream character, who I've often understood within the context of alien abduction or ET experience, but now I'm putting forward a different hypothesis, because that's consistent with my experience, and that's consistent with their experience as they're expressing through my intuition and through these polyphasic means of knowing. All right. They say, okay, so then I look at body marks. I found half a dozen other highly, highly, highly geometrically significant and similar body marks. I call them dots in a line, dial, D-I-A-L, dots in a line. These are not red grid mark phenomena, but similar, right? And so I'm like, oh my God, this geometry is incredible. I just have to see if it's present in the pulsations of UAPs. And I've identified at least 3 different types of pulsation patterns associated with UAPs that are expressive of intentional and intelligent geometry. This is not up for debate. The thing that's up for debate is what that geometry means, who's sending it, how it's getting there, right? And I say maybe it's autofocus in one of these cases. I say maybe it's rocket body in another case. But given the whole kit and caboodle, I say there's something else going on. I don't know. Perhaps we could do a meta-analysis because I've been keeping track of what I look at. I don't know. It's like 80% of the stuff I look at is highly geometric. So the next thing that we need to talk about is SETI and METI and D-SETI research, and this is really setting the context. I'm in an academic writing class right now, and our research with the research I'm doing is how are people dealing with geometry? What do we know of non-human intelligences? How can we do research on this? And so really the sense here is SETI provides the scientific foundation for what we're talking about, this geometric signaling and communication of intelligence. Finally, I do want to talk about Jungian in this research paper, collaborative with a wonderful classmate of mine, Claudia. we came to the conclusion that the Jungian mandala is like a keystone and a bridge to communication with non-human intelligence, primarily because Jung saw the UFO as an archetypical expression of the mandala. When he used the mandala, he found intelligences and engaged in generative interaction with non-human intelligences that we, I mean, like, you might be familiar with Basilides and I believe Philemon, these characters that are very much expressive of non-human intelligence in the way that other experiencers talk about, not in the way that the Western science materialism or mainstream media talks about. But when you actually and truly say, what are people experiencing? And you can look to the Foundation for Research into Extraordinary and Extraterrestrial Experience. They did a survey of 3,000 people that are not mentally ill, that have conscious recall of their encounters. And it looks the same. Like, it looks the same. So so I'm saying here that perhaps we can look to Jung as a keystone in this bridge. All right. So they give me an analysis example, and I really want to talk and walk through what this analysis is. So the instruction was around ruler and compass geometry, and bringing everything into proportion that I can see. It is tuned to my theory of mind. It is tuned to the scope of my eyes. It is tuned to the size of my compass, right? Like, or your compass if you're looking into it. That's the thing to understand. We're not looking for a needle in a haystack. We're looking to the most fundamental signals of intelligence there is, which is the presence of regular intervals, symmetry, bisections, and golden ratio. That's it, right? I thought it would be more complex, like the numbers 1 through 10 even, or pentagrams, pentagons, that sort of thing. It's not. The stuff I'm seeing is regular. It involves bisection, doubling. It involves extension and division and golden ratio. And that's pretty much it using ruler and compass. So here's an example. I say, okay, after I got through the dots and the line stuff, I go, I actually think that the pulsation of lights could be mapped like dots in a line. Let's see what it looks like. And this is an example of the analysis I've developed, which this comes from a video, and I'll show you that shortly. I'm calling it the owl pulse. Owl pulse because the pulse is interesting, and you can see it mapped in brightness over time in the bottom of the slide, and then you start to see this tick 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 pattern. That pattern actually is an airplane. It's a known airplane. You can see its contrails. You can hear it in the video. But beforehand, there's this really like pulse, 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 and I go, oh my God, that felt really meaningful. It's like 3 seconds, and I saw this. The video comes from Pulsating Orb ? And there's this a guy who's videoed several anomalous events, and it's like, this seems meaningful. He also has a video of an owl that's been looking at him, and this is really important to my notion of animal embodiment as a dream shamanic characteristic. And the expression here is I'm going to say that animal embodiment as a dream, as a characteristic of dream shamanism, is characteristic of the phenomena, is a means for communication, and is the mechanic, or one of the mechanics that we can use to understand how these non-human intelligences are expressing similar geometries through dreams involving tall grays and short grays, right? So these ET typologies, as well as orbs, so these flashing bits of light close to us, as well as technological craft in the sky. I'm saying those are all vehicles of consciousness in the same way that the animal is a vehicle of consciousness for the dream shaman. And so that's how I'm understanding it. So that when I see actually this sort of trickster behavior, this potency of meaning, and the presence of an animal that a human being is saying, this is strange, this feels something, I say, those are the same exact qualities the tall gray taught me in my dreams to recognize, and provided physical examples in my waking life of strange animal behavior for me to explore that with. All right, so this is an example of the analysis. Now, I've got frame number on here, 410. I've got a circle of light surrounded by a red line. That red line is object detection coming from Python's library OpenCV. The circle of kind of gray around that comes directly from the video, and I manually take a circle and I just isolate the pulsation I'm looking at. So the system actually gives me the XY coordinate of the object being detected, so then I can place it in the center of an image and create a GIF, an animation of it pulsing back and forth. I take that data, I get the brightness, I get the area of it, I get the difference between the lowest low and highest high. I get some other information from it, and I put it into a CSV, and I graph that using Tableau Public, which you can see all this stuff. So that's the example of analysis. And let's see what's coming up next. Yeah, I want to talk about the analyzed phenomenon, right? So I've analyzed dreams as part of this inquiry, crop circles, body marks, orbs, UAP. Orbs, like I said, are bits of light that sort of pulsate around. People have a sense of meaning with them. They go, oh, this is meaningful. They look like out of focus stuff in cameras. To be honest, they do look like out of focus stuff in cameras. I am running tests with lights and other cameras to see, can I actually reproduce this phenomena? CE5, human-initiated contact experience. This is when people have meditations and invite contact phenomena to arise in their life. Most of the stuff I'm talking about has some intersection with this. That's one of the things I'm observing. I've also looked at radio waves. That's in terms of sound, pulsation of sound. I've looked at videos of radios that are flashing, as well as graphs from software-defined radio systems. Also, other anomalous light pulsations. I've looked at the pulsations of ceiling lights that are moving back and forth in this sort of golden ratio cadence, as well as I had one client who anomalously had a sort of orb type shadow appear on her face on a Zoom video. And I've analyzed that, and I haven't found meaning in it. Some of these I don't find meaning, some of them I do. I've also analyzed several aircraft. I've analyzed the Navy Pyramid and resolved that into FAA compliant aircraft using the pulsation patterns in line with the debunking that has already gone on with that one, as well as a police helicopter. And like I said, I'm working more and more to get a strong vocabulary of known phenomena as well. I want to talk a bit about the analysis process so you know what's going on. When I do, there's a different preparation process for each modality, but it's totally fine. Generally, the purpose here is to get it to the scope that I can work with. It's not helpful to if it's all jammed together, not helpful if it's too wide. I have to be able to see and work with the patterns. And the test I'm doing is, can I draw this figure with my ruler and compass and see the congruence with that by overlaying the two, not through math, not through arithmetic or algorithmic processes. I use algorithms, though, in some cases. The analysis I do is strictly focused on regular intervals and golden ratio right now. That's what I look for. I believe actually there is more coming in, but I'm building my basic geometric language first. Like I said, I thought I would use a lot more tools of ruler and compass. I'm actually using the dot, circle, lines. I transfer intervals using the compass. I bisect. Sometimes I double. And I'll walk through all of these processes soon. I divide and extend things in the golden ratio, and then I do congruence testing. The moment of, the congruence testing is building the construction, overlaying it on the image, and seeing, yes, indeed, the mark on the body is explained by a perfect geometric figure that's constructed using these simple methods. The pulse analysis goes, okay, does this pattern look similar to some other ones? I go, this one looks like an airplane that I've known and analyzed. Then I go, how many pulses per second are there, right? So I go, I know there's 40 to 100 pulses per minute actually for FAA compliant aircraft. So if it's before or above that, I go, oh, this is fishy, right? I actually am putting forward the hypothesis that some of these orbs look like airplanes because our airplanes look like orbs and they might be communicating. And so that's one of the hypotheses here. I want to see what's next. Great. I'm talking about hypothesis too. Right, so intellectual categorization both matters and doesn't to this experience, right? Is this UAP definitely a UAP or is it definitely a drone? I say actually it doesn't matter. And I'm going to cite some precedences here, but at some level, if there is a heightened sense of meaning and communication, and if there is relevant, meaningful geometry present within that experience. So you're now dealing with a number of different multidimensional phenomena, synchronicity, personal sense of meaning and intuition, as well as geometry that in and of itself, no matter where it's expressed, is an expression of intelligence and meaning that has cultural significance around multiple dimensions. Like I said, it doesn't matter if Doug and Dave did the golden ratio in England or not, because you're relating to the intelligence of the cosmos through both hoaxing and non-hoaxing phenomena. Anyways, if you want literature precedents that this doesn't matter, go to John Mack's book, Abduction. He's asked indigenous perspectives on UFOs. He goes, are you making this up or not? And they go, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Same thing. This sense that all is mind actually is a Western, is strong in Western traditions as Hermeticism, as Neoplatonism. It is not, we are not as materialist as you might want to believe or we've been led to believe. Gackenbach is a dream researcher. She wrote this paper on UFOs and out-of-body experience, and I thought it was really interesting. She also wrote another paper on lucid dreaming with LaBerge. That paper came through the Varieties of Anomalous Experience book that we studied in class. She had this conversation with a Cree dreamer, and she's wanted to get a sense of like, are you lucid dreaming or not? Took them like 3 interviews to figure out what we're actually talking about with lucid dreaming. And basically the Cree dreamer says, oh, I get what you're saying. Lucid dreaming doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. And then the other thing I've mentioned is Worsley, the lucid dream researcher, not LaBerge, but the person who experienced it at the same time or discovered that you can move your eyes in REM according to intention and therefore proving consciousness in dream states. He went through processes of inducing lucid dream experience, and he often saw extraterrestrial beings who would sort of interrupt his process. So there is a sense of placebo. Placebo works. Placebo really heals people and does amazing things. And we call it placebo now, but we also might have called it correspondence magic or doll magic or something like that in the past. And so that's really important to know that even though scientists use placebo as a word to describe a naturally potent quality of consciousness is still there. So here I'm saying the experience of unfolding meaning through geometric experience is potent in and of itself. So I am putting forward an unconventional ET and UFO hypothesis in association with this inquiry. I'm orienting it from monophasic to polyphasic. This inquiry goes from the monophasic Western sciences, generally from the point of view of liberal arts, philosophy of science, integral theory, and psychology, right? So that's where we're going from towards a polyphasic understanding based upon, yet again, Western research of dream shamanism of other cultures. And I'm bringing in the case of Dr. John Dee as a Western precedent for ET-NHI contact, primarily so we are not, this inquiry is not culturally appropriative, but rather stands on its own cultural legacy, and that comes through Dr. John Dee, as well as the geometric work of like Plato. I'm saying that I'm aligning away from nuts and bolts explanations of ET UFO to more dream-based. I understand that dreams can express in very real ways in this waking world. And so in this way, the hypothesis I'm putting forward is kind of based on dream shamanism. Dream shamanism is defined, like I said, in the Laughlin and Rock paper, but it's important to reference Stanley Krippner's work here. Stanley Krippner directed the Maimonides Dream Lab studies of dream telepathy. He's a wonderful name in dream studies, has taught a lot about extraordinary and shamanic dreaming. He says that there is precedent for dream apports, meaning things coming from the dream world into the physical waking world. He says there are extraordinary aspects of dreaming that are enigmatic, like precognitive dreams and things like that. These need to be understood within the context of dream shamanism. That was his recommendation. So dream shamanism here involves control of dream state, an awareness that there is a real yet non-physical component of the dreams, and that the real and non-physical component of dreams and the characters within can express through the phenomena like apportation. When we consider things like dream or like stigmata, the expression in the body, when we consider that, we then can start to say, okay, apports are sort of like the apportation might explain UFOs, right? That this is the law of one hypothesis as well. And then stigmata can explain the marks on the body. So we're not actually dealing necessarily with physicalized abduction and nuts and bolts stuff here. I'm saying there's enough precedent in dream shamanism and the related phenomena that we can start to say, hey, this is a dream shamanic experience. The other thing that's really important to note is the control of the dream state. So our lore and our understanding of extraterrestrial contact most of the time comes through dreams or dreamlike experiences derived from hypnosis and things like that. Most of the time people say they don't remember it well. Most of the time they hypothesize a mind control function. However, I say if we take unremembered REM dreaming as the precedent, as the primary precedent for the missing time experience, because we can see, there's the qualities back and forth, and that's the subject of a paper in and of itself. Then we can say, actually, the mind control function may be caused by the same cause of us not remembering our dreams, right? It also signifies that it also explains how our ET contact experiences are highly psionic and kind of involve these sorts of virtual reality, sort of what's real, what's not experiences. And it also, this hypothesis puts forward ways of working with it. Primarily mindfulness, intention, and attitude are the ways we work with dreams. And we can work with mindfulness, attitudes, and intentions in the context with ET-NHI contact phenomena. And we may actually see shifts of unwanted contact behavior, as well as integration of memory that may be objectively verified related to those events. Like I said, this is a long talk. Thank you for being here. This is a lot of information, and it is not presented quite cleanly or as engagingly as I would like, but this whole inquiry needs to be documented because my dreams reminded me of this morning, and I think it is important, and I personally want this expression of exploration to see what it feels like to say all these words. I'll work with this, I'll publish this, like I said, but go backwards and forwards as you like, and take everything very lightly. So the next hypothesis I'll put forward is that the UAP or the orb might be something like a plasma consciousness. I turn to the work of Dan Winter when he talks a lot about plasma consciousness, as well as a man named Buddy who put forward the Doherty set as something meaningful. In this hypothesis, we can turn to Jacques Vallée's work that sees and documents fairy, demon, angel, that sort of thing as expressive of this consciousness. And therefore, we might see the UAP and or as an expression of this non-human intelligence that has once expressed as fae or elementals or angelic beings. This would then express through the dream shamanic principles, aka a real dream-based experience that has capacity to manifest, limited capacity to manifest into this world. Like we have information around like fairy feasts and gold coins from fairyland changing, and it's the same sort of experience. We also have lores of fairy marks and witch marks. So this is a really strong candidate. In this way, this hypothesis here that the orb is something like a non-human intelligence expressing physically in ways like will-o'-the-wisp or whatever. I think a lot about aircraft, and this is from the NARCAP Technical Report 20. I go, why are they doing this? Why are they pulsating in this golden ratio pattern? And I analyzed airplanes, and I realized that they actually too pulsate in this golden ratio pattern, at least a one-dimensional kind of expression of it. And I thought, we're sending hundreds of people through the sky, all in dream states, sleeping and watching science fiction and fantasy or dramas, all dreaming or thinking or hoping or journeying. We're sending them through the sky. We're putting this flashing light on them. And the sky is where these plasma intelligences might live, who sometimes express as flashing lights or as dream beings. So I thought, wouldn't it seem reasonable that they go, there's something that's dressed like me in the sky. Why don't I go up and respond to it in the way that it's talking to me through my language of light pulsations, right? So then that may actually be a communication. And this is part of the kind of strange hypothesis that I go, orbs might be people too, and we might actually be dressing up like them when we fly in airplanes, right? They may be more dream than not, actually. And in that case, when we have 300 people all drunk or watching movies or dreaming about what's going to happen next, with only like one or two people sort of holding down the fort in terms of consciousness, like waking phase consciousness, like that looks to me like a fairy being, right? Like we've dressed up like a fairy being and we're now talking to the will-o'-the-wisps and the sylphs, is what sort of it looks like to me. Although that's ridiculous to say, why not, right? So the next hypothesis that I'd like to put forward here is that orbs or UAPs are actually something like future humans. And this is a hypothesis that Dr. Michael Masters has been talking about as ETs as future humans. I'm saying that the orb or UAP may actually be the future human, right? That the orb may be a waveform expression and that a human might be a particular expression of that. The reason why I say that is if you look at the work of William Henry, who has talked a lot about light body transfiguration and UFOs, you start to see that there is congruence and consistency in that expression. Next, we'll see that the same geometry actually is being expressed through the dial, the dots in the line phenomena, or triangle marks are actually the same geometry it's being expressed by the orbs themselves, right? So this is a clue. From those people who are having dreams of ETs or dreams of connection with the UFO or orbs, they're having marks on their body that express the same geometry, right? So I would say actually, right, like as fantastic as it may be to say, like in the future, one day I will be an orb through the process of light body transfiguration, and that I myself from the future have visited myself through the guise of a tall, gray extraterrestrial being who has a capacity to mark on my body a mark of geometric significance, right? Like, that's ridiculous to say, yet the phenomena actually, that seems to be a valid hypothesis. How else can we explain some of the issues regarding the Fermi paradox, the non-interference sort of paradoxes, as well as explaining why this craft has meaningful interactions with us? We have to move to them. They've already been always present with us, sort of thing, and that's why we haven't seen them. But that's why we're seeing them now. It's because we're willing to hold that space of potency, right, and possibility in our culture now. So that might be one of the other reasons. That's a hypothesis I'm actively working with. Another hypothesis that I'm working with is that there is a discernible and measurable pulse rate of non-human intelligence, generally when they desire it. Right? Like, they are revealing themselves only when they desire it and how they desire it. And that in part is in response to our human initiated contact invitations, right? I'm saying that the golden ratio cadence may be like a pulse rate of non-human intelligence. It may also be a sort of characteristic expression of intelligent design on the part of humans in the case of aircraft, absolutely, right? We see that in the aircraft video, they're pulsating in golden ratio patterns. That's undeniable. So I'm not sure, right? I'm thinking, right, there is something discernible here. There is clear marks. I'll point to different things in the actual graphs that I go, wow, actually this feels like a meaningful pulse rate. It feels like songs to me. This pulse rate may be expressed through both legitimate and non-legitimate sources, aka the hoaxers or not, right? The fact is they're expressing an intelligent geometry that has significance culturally, mathematically, spiritually. That geometry itself, when we understand it to be a transpersonal ritual, a transpersonal ritual, it connects us with a deeper truth. So I'm saying that it connects us with a realm of truth that makes the distinction between legitimate and non-legitimate as meaningful as the distinction between self and other. And that actually is a very big clue. You'll see that a lot of the people that have these marks on the body talk about unity consciousness and things like that. It's not a mistake. It is not a mistake. And that actually is one of the functional requirements, as I understand it, for the manifestation of these things, is at least the estimated capacity for non-dual and non-Cartesian awareness, right? So that's being present in both dream and waking is a great practice for that. I'm saying that this geometry also, that when we see this geometry, when it's very coherent, when there's pulse rates, where we see symmetry and bisection and golden ratio, this adds significance to polyphasic testimony, right, of dreams. I'm saying that if someone sees a UFO, they have a mark on their body that is geometric and expressive of that same geometry, and they have a dream of interacting with non-human or extraterrestrial intelligence, I say that is actually one of the most meaningful configurations of events because of the objective significance of this anomalous geometry. And the deduction I have based on all of these hypotheses, and like I said, these are hypotheses, is that the non-human intelligences are wanting communication right now. They want it revealed, that they have this capacity, and they are inviting us to communication through multidimensional means. That is both through geometric expression, right? So pulsating any light source and watching that, right? Going through the ruler and compass constructions of these things. They are both physical and psychical beings, right? So they have the capacity, They are much more developed in terms of the psychical technologies than we are, as evidenced or as makes sense when we consider the fact that we have been a monophasic culture. These are likely polyphasic cultures, and likely are as developed as we are across the spectrum, that we are developed in terms of our mechanical capabilities. So let's get to it. I know this was quite some time, and I am going to now move into demonstrations. So this is, let me go into geometry. This is one of my favorite experiences. Let's work with the postulates now. All right, so I want to introduce you to my tools so you understand what I'm talking about. Blank piece of paper, on the other side of which is the owl pulse, and we'll work with that in just a bit. I am going to walk through the Euclidean postulates, right? So we're going to say, I can draw a point. This represents a point. I can say a point basically extended in one dimension is a line, right? And then I'm saying a point extended in two directions is a circle. And this is a compass. It moves and transfers this interval. And we can say, hey, this is equal to that. And so I've drawn a point, a line, and a circle. This is all we need to do ruler and compass geometry. I'll show you kind of a utility of ruler and compass geometry, right? So now I've taken the same radius, and I've taken it from the circle, and I'm putting it on the circumference, and I'm just going to draw this circle. This figure is called the Vesica Pisces. This is the emblem of the Book of Galactic Light. This is their sign. This is what came through. Book of Galactic Light is a 400-page book I wrote doing John Dee's angel communication rituals. I transcribed it, and there is a record of communication with these non-human intelligences. Book of Galactic Light. So now I'm going to draw, connect the intersection points. This is like a fundamental situation going on. So we've got a straight line here. We've got another straight line. And we've got two circles. These two circles are the same. I drew them with the same compass, and we can test. We can test. When I put the compass in the circle, does it line up? I go, oh, that lines up. And this lines up, right? So we can see that. We can actually see that. And now we know that. I'm walking through this so that we can charge this tool and this tool with meaning for you. We're doing ritual work now. This is not math per se. This is transpersonal ritual. This is a ritual of epistemology. This is a talisman. This is a talisman. This is a magic glyph, right? This looks like it is math, but we're actually needing to charge this up with meaning and charge this sort of stuff up with meaning. So now we've done the drawing this as a perpendicular line. This is the construction for a perpendicular line. This is also the construction you might use to bisect a line. So we are now bisecting this ratio, right? This interval, the radius, by drawing this line straight through the center. I'm not going to prove to you that this is the case. This is, I'm working exclusively with constructions, and I know for a fact this is half, and you can look it up. So the next thing I want to do in this experience is draw, right? I want to draw a circle that's now double the original circle because we want to be able to double intervals. So I said bisection and doubling is important. Oh, how beautiful is that? We've now doubled. We've now got the original radius. We've bisected it. By drawing the circle, we doubled the original radius. And now, by taking that diameter as the radius of a new circle, we've doubled it yet again. So these are all very, very expressive of the basic tools of ruler and compass geometry we need. So now we'll do one more thing. with this construction, which is take this intersection point and draw it down to here. Isn't that interesting? So you might go, what is that? What is that? What does that mean? Well, I can now tell you that when we work on the number line here, and I'll just make this bigger, right? We have now drawn the golden ratio. And there's a lot of proofs behind this, but we've divided the original radius into the golden ratio. And I'll show you that's the case by applying these golden ratio calipers, meaning this will grow in accordance with the proportion, right? So if we wanted golden ratio on that diameter, extending it out, we might do that with the calipers. This is not actually a ruler and compass experience. When I draw this from the calipers, this is not ruler and compass. We need to use the ruler and compass to do something similar. There's several different techniques to do this. This is the one I end up using because I end up using vesica Pisces and division rather than extension, actually, more often than not. So that's all you need to know. And we've actually gone through a congruence test, right? So if I can draw another situation here and go, oh, actually, let's do a congruence test for all the Western people who like arithmetic as much as we do. So if I go like this, and I put the first tine on 0 and the second tine on 1, this gets me to somewhere around, and you can guess it, 1618, right? Isn't that really beautiful? So we can also take the smaller one, and from 0 to 1, these two tines, and I'm moving this, and they're about 1.618. So that's a congruence test on this number line. We've charged these number lines up with meaning because we find meaning in the Cartesian number line and the unit lines. So we go, this is meaningful. This is what we do. I often will never look at the numbers here because it doesn't matter. We're working with proportion. All right. So let's get back to it. We've gone through postulates, symmetry, bisection, golden ratio, division, extension, and congruence testing. These are all signifiers of intelligent communication as put forward by the SETI researchers. So that's really important to know. We're going to talk about body marks now. So the red grid mark phenomena, dots in a line, dots in a triangle, Project Unity. And I'm going to run through some of the sources of this, and then I'm going to run through well, I'll just do one by one, actually. So let's get back to this situation. We're going to go through all of these too, so it's going to be a nice long presentation for y'all. We are going back to this group. This is the red grid mark phenomena, experiencers and researchers. It is thousands of people are in it, and there's hundreds or thousands of expressions here. It's just these regular grid marks. And now let's get back to, I'll bring that and then go geometry with me. So like I do, I've been analyzing it, and I really don't do any image manipulation to these images, but I'll start drawing lines to make sense of it. And then I will transfer, I'll try to build the grid itself. And yeah, I can build the grid itself. I start measuring, and then I'll overlay, right? We can do a quick, that's very similar kind of testing. I do that on the window. I need a light box here to do that for the video. Definitely geometric, definitely unexplained. This comes from a trained plastic surgeon who should really know if this is anomalous or not. They say it's not, so it's not known. They worked with me to figure out what was going on in this case. So we've got we've got an example there with red grid mark. These come 63% of the cases, so as far as we know, come in association with strange dreams. And that is just the rate of precedence here in terms of ET or non-human intelligence dreams and body marks is significant. Although most people will go like, I don't know what that means. We're looking at the rates actually when we compare the prevalence rates of these sorts of things across populations. I say actually, as someone familiar with the literature, that it is significant. And I need to put together an argument and a report on that, but that is what I'm seeing. Here's another example. Same sort of expression, same kind of geometry actually. Different shapes, same geometries, right? So let's get back to screen. All right, my dots in a line is coming up next. So I've described my journey on some social media sites, the Experiencer group, LightNet, and Reddit. And so here I'm basically reporting on the story I shared, which was last summer. Solstice, I experienced this mark. I didn't really understand what was going on. It's a definite puncture experience, right? It's going through the skin. There's definitely healing happening, but it didn't hurt for me. There was a sense of regularity. And then I analyzed it. To produce a ruler and compass construction of that. And let me show you that here. I kind of like that this is here because this is the key to everything in terms of the geometry. But here you can see the same image. Here's the geometric construction, and it's more or less very, very similar. It's not exact. It's not the exact size because I'm exploring here and got the ratios wrong. But I have the construction as I understood it, and I produced the congruence test. You can see those on my other thing. But this is an example. Here we've got the construction for the extension of a line in golden ratio. You'll recognize these as nested vesica Pisces that are creating bisections to determine the radius of these. And it's very, very interesting to note that they are in golden ratio with one another. So beautiful. Right. Here's another one, right? This comes from a Reddit as well. And this is really the example of dots in a line. Very, very clear. This comes from his leg. I was able to, the very, very clear definition. There's you can start to see the golden ratio even present here when I start to expand the calipers, right? We're starting to see that expressed as well as the same thing. So I mean, when I'm doing this, basically, I'm doing stuff like this. That doesn't work. Maybe that kind of thing. I'm seeing where this comes through. Like, okay, let's go like something like that. You know, I'm doing that kind of work. And then I get to a point where I can actually construct it with ruler and compass geometry. And I can write down steps to do it. This means it's ruler and compass. These are very, very simple steps, and I've shown you all those steps. That's the construction. Interestingly, I got another dots in the line phenomenon, and I'm showing this now. I won't walk through it, but there's two dots and another dot in the typical dot pattern. There's also a birthmark here, but we're getting the 30, 60, 90 triangle, and this is doubling of X and then the golden ratio. So to the birthmark. So it's a 30, 60, 90 triangle in and of itself that's placed in a significant ratio that is clear and discernible. I'm showing this so you can see some of the language of the construction coming through in these circles, but we're just focusing on the points here and that point there. All right, let's get back to this experience. what's coming up next is Project Unity. Yeah, so I've covered dots in a triangle, dots in a line in a triangle. Project Unity is this. Oh, I'll show you that later. Yeah, I like this channel a lot. He talks about his experiences openly about 1 year ago. You can see the marks on the body. You can see this image, that image of orange orbs. That doesn't come from his experience. That comes from. We'll talk about that one sighting actually, because that's referenced elsewhere in this presentation. But you can start to see the triangles in the. Let's see if I can just right there. So in the experience, I analyzed that dot triangle. But do check out his story, My UFO Contact Experiences in Project Unity. There's all these things. This is a wonderful interview, Dr. Michael Nasser, talking about the future human thing. So let's get back to. I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need that. Let's get back to geometry, which will show up here. Dots in a triangle. This is Project Unity's construction, right? So how I ended up doing this is I darkened those circles using the burn tool. This doesn't add in new information, and I tested that, but I needed to do that and kind of clear out some of that so I could actually just draw on it. But it's not moving things. I only really use the rotate and scale transform tools when I'm changing the shape of something. Because I'm changing the proportions, not the actual shape and size of these things. It's like scaling and rotating the vector, basically. Here we have something that looks like two 30, 60, 90 triangles with clear and distinct whole number ratio between the dots. There's 5 of them here, 5 of them here, and 4.33 down here. 4.33 down here. That is very significant. Pointed to by the so when we get to center of dot to center of dot, and then center of dot to bisection of that point, this was the clue to interpret and build. Is this from that dot center to that dot center, and this dot center to the line is both perpendicular and equal, it looks like to me. And then you can build everything else out of that. And it has mathematical significance. And he saw an orb the day before and had E.T. Orby dreams in between. So that's really important to and spent the last 2 years really like year talking about orbs and ETs and consciousness. So that's very, very clear. I want to now jump back over to Reddit so that you can see. This comes from a few of my markings. Let me see. Got a scoop mark. I don't know what to make sense of those. Scoop marks. Dot in a line. Very, very typical dot in the line, puncture wound. You can even see the golden ratio being expressed. And then 2 dots. 2 dots in a line. And I want to show you actually that, because this is a very, very elegant proof. And this is the last in the body mark series. We got orbs and UAPs coming up. So 2 dots actually printed out. Starting to maybe got some golden ratio there, huh? Yeah, we do. Because I built this construction, which you'll recognize the perpendicular lines, the vesica Pisces, and then the golden ratio, right? It's just nested in different ways. And then you can really just put those next to each other, next to this construction, and you go, this is actually and truly a geometric expression, right? I don't know what are the odds that the same person who has ET dreams has this marking that's like the most pure and direct expression of the geometries I'm talking about, right? Just 2 little dots that they found meaningful and posted on the internet. I go, that's meaningful. Let's see if I can do that. Here, Here it is, right? That is meaningful. The other dots in a line, right, is here, right? That's the construction. This is the printout I was working. Sorry, this is the printout. It's very much the same. You'll notice they don't all line up, and that was actually characteristic of the other Reddit user who had another very, very clear marking, who also dreamt of tall grays. So here, I mean, you've got this angle that's happening, but it's very much in line with geometric construction. That is the yes, that is the experience of the recent 2-dot dial. These are the body marks. We do need to consider some things, right? So consider some things. There are, like, I have moles on my face. Those I have not, please do understand, I have several moles around my body in different patterns and things like that. And I have often wished for them not to be there, and often yearned for some sort of geometric meaning in them, which at 38 years old, I have not yet found that geometric meaning. But this one mark that I found meaningful last year produced this fruitful inquiry, just really shows you, right, the difference of what's real and what's not, right? The next consideration I want to talk about is the standard stuff. So the red grid mark phenomena, about 5% that previous researchers have investigated turned out to be suction through mesh, right? So that's like sitting on a pool drain or something. There's the triangle bed bite phenomena. They do bite in what looks like perfect triangles. So none of these actually that I'm showing you really exhibit the quality of bed bug bites, but that's important to acknowledge. So let's get back over to the screen, because there is a website I want to show you. This is MetaBunk, and they've done some good work with the target symbol mark phenomena. I want to show you. Right, so Jacques Vallée, I believe, this could be urban legend at this point, but this is the information I have about this phenomena comes from the red grid mark dossier that was put forward by experientialdreaming.org that referenced this. This comes from I believe, Eastern European researcher who's finding all of these different target symbol marks, and then they sort of look like burns, and then people go through and say, hey, actually, these are looking like hair dryer burns or something like that. Like, you might brush up against it, not know. I don't know. I haven't done enough analysis on this, but I had to just include this as part of the inquiry. So where are we at now? Start. That's it so far. So let's keep going in the presentation. So now, after you've built some of your geometric vocabulary by looking at these dots in a line, it's important to know that maybe UFOs can be dots in a line. That was part of the intuition. And I want to just talk about the Phoenix lights and Jimmy Blanchett's work. Jimmy Blanchett's work, we saw a little bit of the footage from the Project Unity clip that brings forward Linda Aurora's video of UAPs moving in the sky. He's analyzed that. I'll just show you Jimmy's work, and then we'll switch over to Phoenix lights. Okay, close that out. Yeah, Jimmy Blanchett's work here is Extraordinary Manifestations Revealing the Keys to Our Universe, Part 2, Must Watch. So this really covers that sort of thing. He takes these, let's see if we can, let's actually slow down. There's this shape formation, there's geometry. He's seeing geometry present in this video, and that's actually a really strong precedent. I was synchronistically alerted to this video when I was inquiring about dots in a line on body marks. So I love that. So that's some of his work. And then let's switch over to Tom King's footage of the Phoenix lights. Thousands of people saw this. Let's zoom to towards the end of this, he goes, "Oh my God, this is geometry. This is geometry." And these lights will blink in and out towards the end here, something like that. How wonderful. And then we also have Phoenix Light Network. So I'm going to just talk about that. This is from another experiencer of the Phoenix Lights who has a really interesting missing time story. This is when I became alerted to it because I was looking for concurrent documentation of missing time. This is the only photographic source of missing time of the UAP at the same time as the missing time event happened that I know of, except for Dan Berg's case. And we'll talk about that shortly. Let me show you the photos. These are before and after the Phoenix Lights on the March 13th, 3/13. But they're expressive of the geometry, and I'll show you that. So this is where all of these photos are coming from. Let me just clear out some of the situation here. This you'll recognize briefly from the Phoenix Light Network. As you can see, you'll recognize the bisection. You can see, right? You can kind of see golden ratio showing up here with the calipers, but you can see, right, like this radius in this radius. So from this center point, which is at the edge of the UAP, to this other edge and this other edge, this radius is equal to that radius. How interesting. We already have bisection. Now we have, how do you get the size of these dots? Well, you divide that radius in the golden ratio, right? So we've got that expression really clear and demonstrated. And then how do you place that? Well, you just place this guy and you bisect, or excuse me, you do the golden ratio again there. So that's like, it's like really beautiful to see that construction. This is one of many construction methods, but the fact that I can draw this over top of the image and it lines up very, very clearly and cleanly. I would say actually that this circle to this line is going to be really interesting and meaningful. This circle and this golden ratio, because the themes they're using are the bisection mirrored with golden ratio. We see that all the time. And so this is probably like a perfect circle, kind of like oblongified by the golden ratio. Here is, oh, by the way, these are inverted images of what you've seeing at night. So, because I don't want to, I need to be able to draw on them. Once again, we have the same sort of experience. This is clearly and distinctly showing you what we're talking about. We've got the Vesica Pisces, right? We've got the 2 radius. And as you note, right, it's like the intersection points are either the circle or the edges of the dots. And that actually this is the language of the dots in a line. This is the language of dots in a line. Because you can see it. It is the language of dots in a line, right? Like, it's like, holy smokes, right? Like, I mean, really, right? This sense of like next to intersection points here, right? That's next to this circle. Then we've got this golden ratio. We've got that in golden ratio. Then we've got 2, not in golden ratio, but based on bisection. It's the same geometry. Dots in a line on people's body. The Phoenix Lights from 1997. We'll see it again and again. Golden ratio, bisection, symmetry. This is a geometric communication in addition to being a UAP. A priori, this is meaningful beyond the deductions about the empirical realms, aka just letting you know. This is what these drawings say to me, at least. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. These are all Dr. Kitty's work, again, we can see that sort of same strong bisection experience, the same placement of the UAP next to that point of significance. And this one I found to be extremely beautiful because you go, how are these placed? How are these placed? Well, they're meaningfully placed in a couple different ways, right? So in terms of golden ratio, as well as how I'll show you later, but it's like dividing this, figuring out this creates a ruler and compass construction where you do that, you get the golden ratio extension, you extend that out, and it intersects with points down here, and that's just wonderful. That's worth its own construction. This is I'm not sure what this is. This is again coming from some footage. Again, we have sort of like, I don't even know what. I think this is sort of like circles and a bad photograph of it. But I'm making sense of it even now, and I'm showing how there's the same sort of patterning happening. This isn't exactly clear to me yet. This is an example of like, do I have it or not? And that's where the congruence testing comes in. So you might remember. Let me just get that for you. Oh yeah, it's here. So this is from Tom King's video, and I think this is the orientation in the video. Very, 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 very clear and clean geometry. This is throughout I tested the video. These are geometric. I tested the video, and the geometry is present in every case for 5 minutes straight. We've got golden ratio on this. Golden ratio, it is the placement of this dot is in meaningful relationship, as you can see. It's on this circumference. It's just here we're establishing a golden ratio segment here of the initial radius. This is the thing I'm saying the initial radius is. And here is, again, the circle placed next to the center. That's characteristic of the UAPs, the other Phoenix Lights UAPs, as well as the dots in a line I'm seeing. And so this is actually now expressing dots in a line in triangles or in 2D, in 3D, in video through UFOs. So, but you might remember this one, right? So 30, 60, 90 triangle set within, I mean, like, how interesting. Let's just actually see here. So we've got kind of like, isn't that interesting? What the birthmark would be like that point. This could be that point, and this could be that point, sort of thing. Like, I bet those are actually the same intervals on the line in body marks, as well as the Phoenix Lights from like 20 years before this happened. So that's the Phoenix Lights. I wanted to share that. So let's get back to the presentation. Jimmy Blanchett's works, we've covered that. So now we need those just happened. The Phoenix Lights just happened 2 days ago in terms of how I analyze them. I was looking because of the two dot in a line. I said these remind me of something, and lo and behold, it actually reminded me of the Phoenix Lights. And so that's one type of UAP manifestation where they're actually, the UAPs are in the sacred geometric patterning. The second type of UAP pulsation that I want to talk about is pulsation of light over time. So that's the boop, boop, boop. And so I knew about this, that this is a thing because of Dan Berg and my work with him in Missing Time. So Dan Berg is a Canadian experiencer. He did CE5. He saw some ice circles. He then was invited by Rob Freeman to experience or be a cameraman with the CE5 crew to video night sky when they're doing CE5 meditations, basically. So he's traveled around the world doing this. They went down to the Atacama Desert like 3 years ago because people have received a telepathic invitation from the ETs through 2 different means of automatic writing to show up then and there, and they did. And Dan had this 40 so minutes of missing time, as well as there was this flashing light in the sky. I knew about that. I wanted to get that. Rob Freeman has maybe 2 flashes of Atacama video. That's kind of enough for me to work with, but not enough back then, because I needed to develop the vocabulary here. And so I analyzed the footage that Dan Berg was present at recently. A year ago, they went to the UAP Consciousness Conference that was sat at the Monroe Institute, and there were scholars and researchers and experiencers there, and they did a CE5 and they found this flashing light. And so that's the one I want to talk about. That's the one that really kicked off this whole UAP pulsations of light. So let me show you screen. We go here. Tom's video. Oops. Sky flashes, right? Sky flashes, full spectrum at first annual here. And so somewhere in here, there's a flashing light. It's really hard to see. I think it's just so funny. Right there, right there. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, there it is. So, so we take that and we go, okay, let's graph it over time, frame by frame, intensity and things like that. And I will show you the results here. So if we go to, hang on. I'll take you to my open source repository experience that I keep all of this stuff in now. And go back, it's called etolomy. When we graph that, actually, we get this demonstration. And I think that's absolutely beautiful. So much geometry is present there. And I will show you a little bit how I figured that out. Okay. All right, this is what we got to work with to show you. So I analyze the pulsation of, I isolate it from the screen, and I run it through a process to get the brightness, intensity, and the maximum intensity, and the distance between lowest low and highest high of light in that thing. And I graph it, and it starts to look like this. And so you'll start to see high, medium, that sort of thing, with this sort of in-between cadence. This kind of pattern is interesting. This is interesting. When we start pulling out the golden ratio calipers, it's starting to be meaningful. Most places seem to have, like a meaningful expression. This is extremely geometrically coherent. That's what this demonstrates, is the sense of geometric coherence. This is the underlying construction of the pulsation pattern, how we place each of the pulses. And we're not even talking about intensity. This is just placement in time involves this construction. The intensity also seems to match up to these intersection points. I haven't tested that, but that seems like the case to me. So you can count up the number of pulses. I've done that. I forget exactly the pulse rate. It's really not. This one in particular doesn't look like an airplane at all to me. I did get the Atacama video from Rob, and I have analyzed that. And this is it. This actually does look like the airplane pulsation pattern present in the Owl Pulse video that I'll show you shortly. But this is a pattern of a known plane pulsing, this sort of high, low, high, which actually is very, very, similar to this high. You can almost imagine that this pulsation pattern is nested in there. And you can actually see here, right, this might be something like these, right? Or like this to this. this to this, and there may be actually there's stuff in there. I haven't figured it out quite yet. This is a clear pulsation pattern, 89, that sets it within pretty much not necessarily aircraft pulsation, but it is very, very regular. This is an incredible video to see. It's only flashing, but at the Atacama Desert, it's like 2 minutes, and there's other stuff that happens, but this is happening at the same time as Dan Berg's missing time experience, and this is the same. It feels like the same geometry. The characteristics of the flash actually exhibit similar. The flashing light exhibits the same cases of being high up in the sky, not moving, pulsating like this. So that's a really interesting thing, and we're starting to get to know perhaps flavors of non-human intelligences, let's say. That's like a high-flying, flashing UAP. So that's the Monroe Institute and Atacama UAP. You can get videos about that at Rob Freeman's channel. We've also got the Cosmic Highway from Jimmy Blanchett. Let's bring that up. Cosmic Highway. I love Jimmy's work. It's wonderful. And this is a pulsing orb, or a UAP that's not flashing, it's pulsing. So you can see that there. Oh, I meant to show you something too as part of the analysis technique, because this is, if I go in here, we were working with Cosmic Highway. This is all Python, by the way. I create CSVs. I'll show you this. I'll show you. You can access this online. And then I make a GIF out of it. I deleted that. Here's the Atacama GIF. This is only where they have it's not none of the gaps. This is only where I can detect an object. So you can see the frame rate, you can see the area of the object, I'm getting the brightness. You can see, yeah, I can detect it, right? Like that's what this is demonstrating. Yeah, there's a flash, that makes sense, right? I take that and I put that into Tableau Public, just because it's easy for me. And I'll show you, this is the Atacama graph, right? Like how incredible is that? We only see one of the pulses here in the bright area graph, as well as the brightness graph. It's very, very dim coming in. But when we really zoom in, we can start to see some of that sense of, like right here, it looks like pulse, 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 gap, 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 pulse. Right, so that's really coming through, and this is data. It's data from a computational analysis process that was really easy to set up on these UAPs. So that's why I'm sharing this. Is this also another analysis way of analysis? So Monroe Institute, where are we? Thanks. Monroe Cosmic Highway. Yeah, that's the thing I was talking about. I wanted to show. This pulsation pattern, right? Because if you compare that with Atacama, oh my God, right? So we've got the bright, bright, not so bright, 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 not so bright. Oh my God, and look, there's things here. There's points of geometric significance, and so we might actually predict. This is that there's something going on here. Something like that, right? Here. I haven't done the analysis, but this is another CE5 associated high-flying UAP. This is a pulsation pattern of it. This is exemplary of, I love setting up the tines on these and seeing where the points of geometric coherence start to come out, right? And so we're actually seeing points of geometric coherence being expressed through this golden ratio experience right now in this grid pattern. And this grid pattern may actually be the pulsation rate of coherent UAPs. Cosmic hello, cosmic highway. This here again is similar, right? So instead of having, we've got a big gap, and a little gap, right? This is the inversion of that process, but it visually looks the same, right? So we've got this big gap really established by pulse, and we can see that, and that sort of looks almost opposite to the pattern that we've been talking about, right? Isn't that incredible? And that comes from not Cosmic Highway, from John Martin, who is a beautiful contact worker who makes beautiful music, and this is something, right? This is what's happening, right? In that cosmic, that Hello Beautiful UAP orb, and I think that's just incredible. And as to what that actually is, right? Like it may be an airplane, it may not, but seeing how it's showing up in the CE5 experience as well as having these connections seems meaningful to me. So now, I wanted to talk about the Owl Pulse video because this is a sort of bridging video for me in my mind. It has both sense of Trickster and not. It has the sense of Orb and not. It has the sense of airplane or not. And this is the video we're talking about. This guy is filming, I think in association with like CE5 explorations. He's just looking out and he sees something happening, and then we'll see an airplane come across the sky. And that's it. I mean, what is that? What is that? And so I went ahead and I graphed this pulse. I printed it out and I go, this sort of looks like golden ratio to me. But also I wanted to analyze the plane. So we can zoom into the plane's pulsation pattern, right? And this is yet again very, very, very kind of similar expression as the UAP in the Monroe Institute UAP, as well as the other pattern I'm talking about. But the fact is, you can see this go across this screen. You can hear it. You can identify it as a plane in the video. In the Monroe or the Atacama video, this thing it moved 4 pixels over 2.5 minutes. 4 pixels over 2.5 minutes, and it's clearly in the like stratosphere or like in the like way up there. So how that is even happening is a technological feat in and of itself, even if it is an airplane. So this owl pulse I wanted to do some geometry with too. Right, so I'm starting to measure this 32 between the pulses, right? Here we've got this, and I'll show you a little bit of what I'm doing, because this goes like, oh, is that golden ratio? Like, oh, but kind of looks like it. Kind of looks like it to me, and I go like, is that the same? Like, what's going on? You know, I'm like, oh, from there to there. Oh, that kind of could be. That kind of could be. So I'm still not sure about this one, but it really does to me sort of feel like golden ratio. It feels like it wants to be known a little bit, but not much. Not like the high flying UAPs want that pulsation to be known. So that sort of bridges between orb and aircraft. The final thing that we need to talk about is rocket bodies and other things that are somewhat geosynchronous, that are pulsating in light. There's other things out there I'm exploring. I'm creating a vocabulary around what these pulsation patterns are. Rob Freeman says, hey, please be aware of rotating rocket bodies in your analysis. Please do. We were fooled by some of them. And so I'm offering that caution as well, not fully understanding the full implications of what those look like, right, and how to identify those. I'm just observing, right? I'm saying, isn't it significant that the geometry that's being marked on people's body is being observed in CE5 associated unidentified aerial phenomena footage that is anomalous in and of itself? Isn't that interesting? So we have covered the UAPs. Now we get to cover the orbs. So I'll talk about the Hudson Valley case. I'll talk about some of these other orbs and then considerations. So let's get back to the screen. Pulsating green orb. Here, I was watching this because it was about the Phoenix Lights. And then there's footage that comes in of the Hudson Valley mass sighting. And here, I'm not sure what's going on here, but I definitely know that's a pulsation, right? So I picked that up and I did the analysis, and I'll show that to you here, right? And I go, oh wow, that's actually starting to sort of look like the other pulsation patterns, although this is a very clear kind of sinusoidal experience. And I forgot actually to walk through some of the airplane videos too. So let's get back to the geometry. So here let's just go through it. I'm testing. I'm marking out where are the meaningful points in the pulsation expression. I'm doing that by drawing these lines. The reason why I do that is so I can go, if it's meaningful when it changes here, when the area shifts up a lot, or the brightness, I go, that's actually a start of a pulsation. I go, that's a meaningful point geometrically. The end of the pulsation is likewise meaningful. If I can start to understand that there's a regular grid pattern or a golden ratio, then I go, hey, this is geometric. So I start to notice, hey, that actually looks like golden ratio. And when I start to fudge it a little bit, it is golden ratio. But as you can see at this pulse, I'm not quite there. Here, I'm not quite there. It needs cleaner analysis. But it feels as if there's a variability in that experience, as opposed to the immense regularity of the airplane that we're seeing expressed here, which you can discern here. This is from the Navy pyramid. This one is from a video of an airplane. Navy pyramid was looks like an airplane that was out of focus, but you can see the absolute regularity and count up with mathematical precision the intervals between them, and that level isn't necessarily fully expressed here in my analysis of that initial video, and so there's a sense more of variability here than elsewhere. I would actually like to estimate the center of these peaks and then measure that before I make a conclusion, but I wanted to share that as an example of perhaps something in between the regular pulsation of an airplane and irregular expression here. The next orb I want to talk about comes from the NARCAP TR Technical Report 20. This was filmed of a video. Let me show that to you. This was filmed right here from commercial pilots. There's scientific study of this experience. It's really fascinating, actually. There's a shape coming through. We go, is this autofocus or not? Is this autofocus or not? That's the biggest question in my mind. The thing is I have found two other cases that have this experience, and one case actually has enough footage that we can start analyzing this. I actually think it is a little bit of autofocus and a little bit of not autofocus, and I want to get to a very conclusive way to state this. But when we look at the pulsation pattern of this, which basically it just does this sort of thing, goes backwards and forwards, get brighter and darker. The footage actually, some of the things that's really important to do is listen to what people are saying, because you'll understand how unique these experiences are and how offensive perhaps it is to offer the hypothesis that they are merely getting excited about autofocus, because they are being excited about something that's really happening out there in the world that excited them so much that they are now engaged in documentation, right? So that's important to understand in all of these cases. I want to come back to the geometry. This is that geometry. This is kind of zoomed in, and as you can see, it is expressive of golden ratio very, very clearly and cleanly, to me, at least in my mind. You know, that sort of thing, as well as the sense of like height actually has a little bit of golden ratio experience. That's consistent across NARCAP, and I go, hey, that might actually be a mechanical autofocus event. I've kind of, well, let me just show you. I've tried my best. I tried my best recently to get the same effect from doing that with a moon. And this is a star. This right here is the moon pulsations. I cannot get regular in this way. I've also tricked my autofocus, and I can't get regular in that way as well. Just the moon. So let's get back to geometry, because this comes from another thing that looks like it's doing autofocus, but is exhibiting two different patterns here. So either they're doing two different patterns in an autofocus event, or it's an orb pulsation, maybe compounded by an autofocus event. Here's another example of an orb. I can't remember exactly where that's from, but again, there's a sense of anatomy almost to the pulsations. We have also with the orbs, which are really interesting, and let's see if we can really get a good example of that here. Let's see if we can get that going on. I'm pulling that up. Here is one of the examples. Let's see, is it loading? Yeah, here we go. Right, so watch it as it pulses. Zooming in. Right, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Those lines. Look at those lines right in there. The circumference. If this was an autofocus event, would those be that consistent? I mean, I'm not quite sure. Maybe this is an image of the lens of the camera being revealed, but it sort of looks to me like a cymatic pattern. It sort of looks to me like I don't know. Let's this is the edge of my exploration actually. These are Dan Berg's ice circles, right? These are what kicked off his thing in a CE5. These showed up kind of coincidentally. He didn't even see these. He's never seen these, but this is sort of what kicked off his whole adventure, right? To see that sort of pattern being expressed here, I go, wow, that is so strange. And so this is from the video called Real UFO. And I analyzed another video called Green Orb. Let's get back into that. Let's just zoom in. See, look at that. Same sort of thing. And is this autofocus? Is this an image of the geometry of a lens? Or is it cymatic patterns expressing intelligent, intentional geometry, right? If you look at the footage, I actually think I've never seen them stabilized in this way. And this seems to be expressive of the same intelligence pattern. So the third orb, I'll point to NARCAP frames, GIF. That's not there, but if I can just find you, it's like in these, right? Like, let's see, is that, right? You can start to see a little bit here of that geometry being expressed, right? We're looking for it now. I have the GIF somewhere. We'll find that for the NARCAP. But this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. So let's get back to this. We've covered these types of orbs. The last orb I want to talk about actually comes from Dreamwell, which is the dream app I'm developing. And the thing to know, right, is like I can enter in, where am I? My dream here, it keeps a track of it. I had a dream called the Orb People today, and they is basically talking about this. And Dreamwell does a dream interpretation of it, right? And so we figured out computationally what are the themes in the dream. So went about 6 months ago. We went, wouldn't it be great if we could visualize dreams as geometry, right? And this is a very, very like it's just a vague orb type experience. And I'll show you if I can get to another one, Phoenix Lights geometry, right? So let me see. So we've got another one coming up. This is just visualization, right? Like that's it. That's a visualization of my dream that we built. Another dream called Tropical Math, right? Here is the dream analysis of tropical math. As you can see, that's a geometric orb. And our team was like 6 months ago, we were like, this is a great idea. Let's do that. And I just, today I'm like, oh, when I entered in the dream to document this outline that came to me in hypnopompia, I went, oh, they're telling me this. They've been telling me this in multiple ways through synchronicity and omen and communication. That for me was like, I don't need a much clearer interpretation than understanding. My brother computationally built all of those geometries. There's 600 files or what. He spent a week doing that. It was important to him. And why is it important? I think because the orb dream people want this communication to come forward. That's the hypothesis I'm exploring here and now in the reasonable way of dreamwork. So with orb kind of communications and analysis, we do need to talk about autofocus and drones. I'm going through these debunking tests, and I'm not offering anything that unless I know it's a thing, I'll tell you what it is. But like Chinese lanterns really are a great example of orange orb. But simultaneously, the orange orb seems to be the type of orb that people say is real because they see it on radar. So that's like an interesting duality there. So that's in part what happens with the phenomena is it has a kind of cloaking of trickster, of hoax, so that you yourself have to build the capacity to discern. This is a quality of dreamwork. This is a quality of shamanic dreaming. This would not be new to you if we were living in a polyphasic culture. But since we've emerging out of a monophasic culture, we need to build the vocabulary of discernment between big dreams, little dreams, messages, tricksters, all sorts of stuff. We have other sources of geometry. We have other sources of the geometry. Radio is one of them. Time codes is another. There's also light pulsations I'm analyzing. I'll just pull in some of the geometry so you can see. This is audio from radio, kind of graphed visually. This is the same pulsation pattern of an airplane. This is the same thing we've seen in this. It's the same Actually, same as this one. Same as this one. Really, it's very, very clear, similar. But this is coming through radio waves in a CE5 experience, not an airplane. So how does that make sense? I don't know. Another example, right? Same example. This is from recently a pulsations of a kitchen light in a sort of poltergeisty style experience. So those are other sources. Time codes and synchronicities. I want to map all of these events on a calendar and see what's up. So we're getting close to the end of our presentation here. Thank you for being with me in this. I want to run through the claims that I'm making. I know I've offered a lot of hypotheses. I've offered a lot of speculation, and I want to just be very definitive about the nature of the claims I'm making here and now, so you have a sense of it to know what you can hang your hat on, if you will, or what. So the first and foremost claim I will make is that my dreams involving extraterrestrial and non-human intelligences inspired me and educated me in this analysis method, right? And they're my desire to express it. Tonight, last night, the night before, dreams of geometry. It's been geometry dreams for months now, it seems like. And so that's the claim I will make. And I've documented that through dream journals, through hypnosis sessions, through the transpersonal journal in the academic program. So that's a claim. It's like a claim that says, I've had dreams, you've had dreams. Some of my dreams inspire my activities. And that's fine. That's not a major claim. The next major claim I'll make is that ruler and compass geometry reveals intelligence, right? Intentional intelligence in some way, shape, or form. This is not a huge claim, considering that SETI also understands it, considering that geometry literally and truly is the source of mathematics and a lot of our philosophy. So I'm saying that anomalous phenomena may be geometrically described. As you've seen, we've geometrically described it, and showing off the Navy pyramid video and the airplane pulsation patterns really does reveal that this is a meaningful means of discernment in anomalous geometry. The geometry I am seeing is similar across many modes, including airplane pulsation of interval patterns of pulsations, but it involves bisection, doubling, golden ratio, symmetry, reflection, and very, very simple tools and techniques of ruler and compass. And it's the same across body mark, radios, UAP pulsations, UAP flashes, and UAP positioning, right? So that's kind of interesting to see. I'm saying that the geometry is meaningful in an a priori way, not just empirically. So that when we encounter this geometry in either a hoax, a misidentified object, or a truly extraordinary phenomena, we are encountering the same geometry that is knowable directly to you through the base categories of your own perception, right? So this is inherently a human mode of perceiving, or perhaps even a universal mode of perceiving. And that is meaningful in and of itself. Like it's meaningful to see the geometry scratched into the sand, written on a chalkboard, drawn on in pieces of paper, or expressed mathematically through vector diagrams. It's the same geometry expressed in different modes. It is meaningful in an a priori geometric way. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying also that the objective or waking phase demonstration of this geometry, the math behind it in terms of the arithmetic, saying this is a pulse pattern of a non-compliant FAA aircraft or whatever, or all of the math I'm doing that you're seeing through the digits of this computer, right? All of that doesn't matter in comparison to your own personal experience. And the dreams actually happen before and after this level of geometric marking. If you talk to any of the experiencers of dots in a line or like of UFO sightings, you know it happens many different ways over many different times, right? And then the final major claim that I would consider putting forward here, and this is not, I would require a much more significant body of work and a much more rigorous presentation of my material to make this claim. but I'm signaling that as a dream expert and as someone who is educated in the philosophy and history of mathematics, and as someone who has studied art, I am saying that this geometry is a significant indicator that we are dealing with intelligences that may be best understood as people, at least with as much rights as corporations have within our society, who are clearly not people, who clearly do not express geometry, right? These corporate people have rights. And therefore, I say, actually, these things that are expressive of geometry and intelligence and can communicate through dreams and synchronicity and multimodal expressions of anomalous geometry, these are exhibiting signals of intention, of intelligence at a rate that is a order of magnitude greater than corporations have expressed. And therefore, we should consider that these orbs or UAPs may actually be people expressed in a different way than what we normally might understand. And the metaphor here is either the difference between the wave and the particle state of a photon or the dreaming or waking state of human consciousness. So orbs are people too. That is one of the, perhaps claim that this is, the claim I'm offering is that this is a meaningful consideration, that this exploration may be meaningful and relevant, and that there is significant indication that it is intelligent in some way. So what does this all mean? Like I said, we're dealing with geometric objects. It's perhaps intelligence like we know it, right? In the case of the airplane patterning of that pulsation, we know that that is an intelligent and a technological expression of our human creativity. If we're seeing that pulsation pattern happening in places that there can be no airplanes, we then assume that it is life like we know it, technologically advanced, right? They're expressing through many different modes. And the association with CE5 in a lot of these experiences mean they're respectful, that they're tuning their response to our frequency of invitation. And that's really important to acknowledge. This inquiry comes up and out of D-SETI, the dream search or study for extraterrestrial intelligence, depending on your perspective. ET contact and NHI contact is a dreamlike experience, and therefore D-SETI honors the reality of dreams by respecting you, the dreamer, as the final authority regarding the significance of the dream. D-SETI offers dreamwork sessions and educations through the work of me, Daniel Rekshan. I hold a master's in East-West psychology, a certificate of hypnotherapy and depth hypnosis, a beyond quantum healing certification, and I'm a PhD student in integral noetic science, the California Institute for Human Science. Please know that I am sharing my analysis files through the open source and open data repository of ePtolemy. You can get to that in the links below. If you want to work with me or talk to me, please do just schedule time. I work the best way if you schedule a conversation or consultation, and then we can talk. But emails are fine too. Just know that I have a busy life with a little baby. So I may get back to you every week or so, or every once in a while. But when you do schedule a consultation, I see that in my calendar and show up. So I just want to now offer a few reflections, because we've been on a rather long journey together, about 2.5 hours. We've seen a lot of geometry. We've done geometry together. We've contemplated these different phenomena as what they might mean. And I've left you with a rather odd claim that it may be beneficial to consider that the orb or UAP are people too, and to really consider the rights that we are giving to corporations as at least the precedent of rights that we should give to these UAPs or orbs or something like that. I know it's a strange inquiry. I know that there are tendencies to want to debunk these things. That's why I'm sharing my analysis files, is because I go, how can this even be? I I must be looking at a rocket body rotating in the sky. It must be a plane that's taken off and it's just going straight behind me in this line. So it's actually moving, but not, or it's definitely autofocus. And these people are having extraordinary responses to autofocus events or something like that. But given the fact that I've been marked on my body with this geometry, that I have been consistently finding this geometry with people who have dreams of extraterrestrial beings who have participated in something like CE5, that I see the geometries of the red grid mark expressed in combination with extraterrestrial or non-human intelligent dreams, even though those experiencers don't fully understand that. When we look at the prevalence rates of ET dreams and things like that, we go, wow, there's actually something here, right? 63% of these people have had ET dreams. When we compare that with the 6.5% of people in the normal population, we might see some very strong communication here or significance. So thank you for considering that. This actually may raise questions as to what it is to be human. What it is to be human. And I would invite you, if you are in that inquiry, to look to see where your own definitions of humanity are coming from. One of the things that is really important to understand about psychology is that we often cannot see ourselves. So most of the time, if we have been enculturated in a single culture, perhaps haven't traveled or looked through history or read books or even the cross-cultural comparisons from anthropology, we might assume that our way of being and our way of thinking is just the way it is. And so having the sense of human beings are animal bodies that are associated with consciousness that's expressed as brain chemicals is a myth. It is a narrative put forward by a worldview, a cultural worldview. So look to see where that came in and how this notion that orbs can be people too, right? Expressive of through dreams and UFO events, how that makes even sense. If that challenges you, look to see where that challenges you, and perhaps even look to your own culture, the history of your culture and its literature, to understand perhaps that there is a wide range of possible definitions of humanity, as well as a wide range of possible narratives regarding its creation, and understanding who we are from which perspective may be beneficial to you in this unfolding dialogue, because there is really something that is happening at some level, right? This is what the geometry is telling me, right? When I hear the accounts from the audio as I'm analyzing this, one of the things that is overwhelmingly present is the tension between skepticism and belief and faith, right? This yearning to believe in UFOs and this hesitance to do so, right? And there's different orientations that arise out of this sense of yearning. There's a sense of over-identification of phenomena as meaningful. On the opposite, the skepticism says, no, that's just a satellite. That's just a whatever. But at the end of the day, when this geometry, when these phenomena are expressing, you feel it through your heart. You have a dream thing happening at the same time, and you can see it with your eyes, and you can go back to it and see the recordings, and it's pulsating in light geometries that you can analyze. I've gone through this. I didn't know what was there. I discovered this. I discovered this geometry in there in association with my dreams, right? And that comes up, and I keep going, this pattern is expressing itself in multiple different ways. That's why I've done dozens of analysis in the last week, is to say, is this actually one time, many times, or what? And it's here. The demonstrations of geometry are present. They need explanation because the fact is, when this geometry is present, it's expressive of intentional intelligence. There's no way around that. If you want to then say the flashes of light in the sky that are of this sort of pulse rate are airplanes, if you want to be able to say that, you have to also be able to say that the pulsations of light in similar geometric patterns outside of FAA compliance reveal intentional or intelligent technology, right? Like that, those are two things that you can say together because of this geometry. And it's just here, it's there, it's waiting for us. Regardless of what stance or orientation we're taking towards it, it is present. And I personally am taking a stance of feeling empowered as a dreamer to relate to this world as appropriate to my heart and soul and mind, not as necessarily appropriate as a worldview put forward by white men 300 years ago, the like Cartesian, that sort of rationalistic thing. Because when I actually tune into the deeper truths of our Western culture, I see remarkable precedents for understanding this geometry and relating to this geometry, that we're not so isolated or incapable of relating to these intelligences as we might believe. That the precedents here are actually the history of our philosophies and our academics, truly. But somehow we find ourselves in a condition where we have lost this history. And I am bringing this forward not because it's hidden history. It is very obvious. You can go to the library and read it, but it's hidden for some other reason. And this geometry sort of invites us into understanding who we are as a people, to understand the precedence of this geometry. And when you do that, you'll find the works of Dr. John Dee, you'll find the work of Euclid, you'll find Plato, you'll find this whole stream of consciousness that knows what it is, that recognizes this world as an expression of consciousness and mind, and recognizes a vast network of beings, Giordano Bruno, right? So we have this rich legacy that we can tune into to make sense of this geometry now. And I would hope that this very long presentation, and I'll say thank you for sitting through it, if you have, has inspired you to tune back to see who are you as a person and what that means in your cultural context, both in this present moment of current events where we're contemplating, are these things dangerous or not? But also, I hope that this will encourage you to go back to the sources of Western philosophy and academics to really understand that we are in community with these non-human intelligences. And it has been the case since as long as there has been written history. So once again, thank you for doing this work. Thank you for going on this dream with me. And I just hope and pray that we can build a beautiful community that is respectful to everyone together. So with that, thank you.